what they're time, how they're doing, and shows the public how they're doing. So, but were you
Does it
more
track
interested in the that are you were you more interested in the fact that someone runs 24 hours straight?
the whole thing interests me. I'm curious, does the app also track the position using GPS?
Ah, oh, well, Dimitri, would you like to answer
Yeah,
that question?
local, um, I don't know, signal tracking software. So the guy has like little antenna. So every time somebody crosses a certain point, we get a signal. So, and then the process is like that. He has his own software. It's a proprietary software. I don't remember the name of it, but he takes all data, uploads it to the Dropbox. We every minute will load, gets it from Dropbox, process it, put it in a database, and from there, anybody who goes to our website, they get the latest data, and you need to refresh it to see the latest data.
Hmm.
So this is how we do it.
And most websites do that. What's interesting about what Dimitri's system does is we do it in 2 mile loops. So we're running across the same pad multiple times, and it needs to track how many times we've hit that pad. What happens normally on a point to point marathon is you'll have it one at the start line, one at the finish line, and you might have a pad at the half marathon mark. You might have a pad at a couple other marks, but essentially if you look at someone running a marathon, it's going to say, well, the last time they crossed the 6.5 mile mark, they were at this time. So it's good technology. So,
Pretty
but
cool from a technology aspect as well as from an athletic aspect. Reading your bio, that was pretty impressive of all the marathons you ran.
yeah, yeah. So it's definitely something that a good friend of mine, John Taylor, Dimitri, John Taylor says there's always someone further out the branch. As crazy as I am, there are always people who are crazier. And I am just embarking on a whole new world um, of longer, everything 200 miles and longer, essentially, unsupported, running from point to point, like across Ohio. There's one called Coast to Coasters or something like that, where it runs from the coast of Lake Erie to one of the coast big roller coaster sites, and
Oh,
that's a
Cedar
point
Point,
to point.
probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Hmm.
you're pretty much, yeah. Cedar Point sounds right. So those 200 miles, you're pretty much on your own. You're just kind of out there running, stopping at a gas station, getting some food every now and then, maybe grab a Gatorade, and then you're sleeping on your own out in the middle of nowhere, just hoping to catch some sleep where you can. So a real popular place is how gas stations have an ice machine. Um, that's really great because there's usually an outlet behind there and it's lit. So
Hmm.
you can plug in your phone and stuff, and then you can sleep right beside the ice machine where it's lit, which is really nice. So it
Interesting.
seems like it's a little safer.
Yeah.
So
There are so many questions I want to ask, but we need to get started, unfortunately.
sounds awesome. Maybe at the end we'll have time. How about that?
Sounds good.
Hmm.
So if you're ready, we can start the recording and
Okay.
start with a presentation.
Sounds great.
Excellent. And let's go ahead and start the recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland C# User Group. A little bit about the group. We meet every month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover any and all topics related to .NET. You can find all the meeting information for both past as well as current meetings posted at meetup.com at the link listed at the bottom of the slide. We always like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the Meetup website, and NIS Technologies for sponsoring the virtual meeting space. Some general information if you're joining us for the first time. First and foremost, participation is always encouraged, and the only stupid question is the one not being asked. So always jump in with a question or a comment. However, when not speaking, kindly ask you to mute your microphones just to avoid any background noise. And we want to keep it casual but organized, meaning feel free to jump in with any questions or comments. However, we want to give our speaker enough time to go through the slides and the demos. Lastly, the presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube in just a few short days after the editing process. So, for tonight's feature presentation, we have Resilience for Building Stronger Teams by Jason Erdahl. Jason is a tech leader with over 20 years of experience. He's also a doctoral candidate for researching technical team resilience. He is also the organizer of the Minnesota Developers Conference, as well as the Twin Cities .NET User Group. And he also served on the Content Selection Committee for NDC Minnesota. In his spare time, he's an avid runner that had completed more than 60 marathons, Ironmans, and 100-mile ultra marathons. Very impressive. Jason, glad to have you with us tonight. Welcome.
I'm happy to be here. And thanks everyone for joining. While Sam is giving me the ability to present, which he's doing right now, I will thank everyone for welcoming me as a doctoral candidate in cybersecurity. I do have lots of work experience. I'm on a fabulous work break, doing a lot of virtual CISO work for helping people out. But ultimately, I'm a doctoral candidate right now. And I guess the question that a lot of people have is, what does that mean? What does a doctor of IT actually mean? Well, to get a doctorate, you take a lot of classes and you do a lot of tests, including big tests, capstone type tests, and some big papers and projects, kind of like getting a master's or a bachelor's. And you basically do a lot of research into your field. Now I'm done with all that. Then you find a gap in the research and you choose a topic which addresses that gap. I've done that. Mine is team resilience. It's more specific than that, but for the sake of this presentation, let's say it's team resilience. Then you do your research, and then you do an analysis on the data from your research, and then you write a dissertation, and you get approved, and then you're a doctor. That's all in front of me. But I just wanted to give you guys a sense for where I'm at. Today, we're going to talk through a couple things. Our route today is I'm going to answer 3 questions. Who am I? What is my credibility? Why you should want to pay attention to research, and why specifically team resilience is important. Next, I'm going to bring up 6 different solutions that you might want to use to promote team resilience within your team. I'll give you some key takeaways, things you can do right away at work tomorrow. And then lastly, I'm going to answer some questions. Before I get started, are there any questions on any of this? All right, great. For those of you who want the TLDR of this presentation, I have a slide with the TLDR. The first is, provided you are healthy enough, the difference between someone who wants to run a marathon and someone who completes a marathon is resilience. Developing running resilience is all about intention, is not all about intention and mindfulness, though those are important too. It's really about training and building abilities based on your weaknesses and skill gaps. Likewise, it's the same thing with your team. Simply having a mission statement and some cool tools will not help your team. It won't help you finish your race. You need to train for what will go wrong and build up the ability to respond. The example here is Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps heard a lot of stories about how you plan for success. But he knew and feared that something would go wrong. So what he did was practice the different things that could go wrong. And he was in the, I believe it was 200 meters finals for the butterfly, and his goggles fell off. But thankfully, he had practiced what would happen if that happened, and he knew the number of strokes it would take him to get down the pool. And he won that race. He won that gold medal. That's the key. This is something that you can definitely practice for, and you don't have to wait till something goes wrong and then learn on the fly. Back to this, and not as much about Michael Phelps. Who am I? As Sam mentioned, I've been lucky enough to be the organizer of the Minnesota Developers Conference and co-organizer of the TwinCities.net user group. And because I did that, I helped to choose hundreds of speakers out of thousands of applicants. And it's really tough to do that because you want to look for someone who has walked the talk. Credibility is key there, which is why I'm starting with this slide, which is who am I? First of all, I've led technical teams for over a quarter century. Love to say that. And I've been running seriously for about 13 years. I've led teams and companies that have gone public and have gone bankrupt. I've been involved in startups and 125-year-old institutions. I've competed in running, swimming, cycling, triathlon events, anything from 1 mile to 24-hour length in all 50 states. Including consulting, I've worked with over 40 teams in very diverse situations, and I've done 64 marathons or longer. Since October of 2022, I've done 45 marathons, a little over a marathon a month, as I've been working on my doctorate, because the two pair really well. You spend a lot of time getting tired by training for marathons, and then you want to sit on your butt. And I got to say, a lot of getting a doctorate is about sitting on your butt and reading lots of things. So why should you pay attention to research? Well, let's go back to the types of persuasion there are. There are 5 classical types of persuasion. There's timing, urgency, kairos, mission-driven, it's in our mission, credibility, this is what I'm using in my last slide, saying I have the credibility to give you this advice. Emotional, what about the children? That sort of thing. And lastly, data-driven. And as you can imagine, I kind of care a lot about the data-driven because it pairs really well with any of these 4. Why should you pay attention to research? Well, first and foremost, you're not as special as you think you are. We've been raised to know that we're special flowers and we're unique. And we are, but flowers have phylums and families, and for the most part, they ingest carbon dioxide and to give out oxygen. So likewise, your industry, there's probably someone in your industry that has gone through exactly what you're doing, what you're dealing with right now. There's probably some research on that. Second reason is you lack experience. You may have worked at 50, you may have worked with 40 some teams like me, but the research encapsulates the findings from thousands of teams. And sometimes it's in other industries than you've had a chance to work in. And you can gain knowledge from what they did and look like a genius in your company. You can be better with data. As I mentioned, credibility, emotion, urgency, and mission, those are all strong. But a data enhanced argument combined with any of those can be a lot better. And it stands the test of time a bit better. Emotion comes up really fast and fades. People forget your credibility. Urgency fades. Missions change. Data doesn't. Data is constant. And if you make a data-driven argument, yeah, someone could come up with different data, and that's great. You can change your decision, but it's a little bit more solid. And the last one is you might be wrong. In my experience, sure, I've been wrong before, and I really was embarrassed when I put my credibility on the line, and said, "I know more than you," and it turned out I was wrong. And if I just done a little bit of research, I could have avoided that. It's better to get that up front. Why should you research team resilience? Well, resilient teams are more productive. I have the research to show that. And let me take this moment to talk about the footnotes down below. Um, these are sources. And at the very end of this slide deck, I have all of the references for those sources. So all of this data can be found if you look up Mr. Aurora and Hastings, their study in 2024, or Miss Stacy and the work that her team did in 2021. You can find out more all of the stuff that I'm mentioning. So, and the analogy here is a resilient body can do more. It requires less doctors, physical therapists, etc. It's more likely to keep going. Likewise, resilient teams are more productive. They require less managerial intervention and they have lower turnover. It's just the data. Employees under high stress, one issue is they often adopt short term coping strategies that hurt resilience over the long haul. These are called maladaptive coping behaviors. And it really breaks down to the idea that if you're running and you're injured, had a problem with my right knee. So you change your stride so you can get through the run, which is fine, except now maybe you've done that by kicking your right foot out. And now all of a sudden you've introduced a new problem with your ankle. And if you do that time after time after time, now you don't just have a knee problem. Now you have an ankle problem. The better thing to do is to address the problem correctly in the long haul. Now, you do what you need to do to get through the race, but you look at in the long haul how you can become more resilient so the next time it comes up, you've already trained and dealt with it in a better way. Like, for instance, in running, you might change your stride, or you might eliminate squats, which was the issue with my knee. I was doing too much weight on my squats. So this is what you would do in order to build up resilience over the long haul. So, what is resilience? Well, let's start for a second with what it's not. It's not strength. Strength is doing what you got to do when pressure hits. It's not experience. Experience is when you've seen it before and you don't panic. It's not skill. Skill is knowing how to do the right thing. And it's not grit, though the two are often conflated together. Grit is knowing the right thing takes a lot of work and doing it anyway. Getting up early at 6 a.m. and getting your run in because you know you have to do it. It's not resilience. It's good. All of these are good things. But they're not as good as they can be with resilience. Resilience ties everything together so that when things go sideways, you adapt, you figure out a new solution, and you show up again tomorrow because you've made it through. If you have strength without resilience, you're like a boxer with a glass jaw. One hit, boom, down you go. If you have experience without resilience, well, you become a cynic. I've been there. If you have skill without resilience, you become chronically frustrated, constantly annoyed that things aren't perfect. And if you have grit without resilience, you burn out or you become a martyr. Oh, God, remember that guy who used to do all that stuff for us and he would work all those hours for us? Yeah, then he quit. It was a rage quit because he got burnt out. Boy, he was really great. This company's really bad. So this is one of those you don't want to burn out. You don't want to become a martyr. Resilience is the key to activating each of these 4 skills in the long haul. So what leads to the lack of resilience? Well, there's a couple things. Number one, in the individual, if we were to just look at the individual, oh, let me go back, sorry. Perfectionism. Great example where someone is trying to do something more than what they should do in a perfect way. And it's just too much work to try to do that. Or time management. You've bitten off more than you can chew. This is something where you are taking too much time to do different things. Poor work-life balance and emotional exhaustion, where you're physically, you're emotionally, I can't take another thing. That's going to make you less resilient. In a team, it's high workload, either because you guys thought you could do it and let's all get behind it and we can make it happen, or because somebody in Manglement thought, hey, maybe let's give them a stretch goal. That will definitely lead to a lack of resilience. Inadequate recognition. Those same Manglement folks don't recognize you for the great work that you're doing. You get kind of depressed about that. Unhealthy workplace conflict. As we'll talk about later, conflict is not a bad thing. It can lead to an improvement in many cases, but there are several types of unhealthy workplace conflict that's just going to hurt you, and it's not going to make you more resilient. It's just going to injure you. And then lastly, insufficient resources. You're trying to do too much with not enough support. What's the solutions for team resilience? Well, I put them in running terms. Number one is you buy the right shoes, you listen to your body, you train for your race, you take time for recovery, and we'll definitely get to those four. If we have time today, we will get to getting enough sleep, very important, but it kind of is contained in the idea of get enough sleep. And then lastly, run the mile you're in. Solution number one, buy the right shoes. These are my shoes. This is a Launch 10. It has a different insert on the inside, and it has longer shoelaces, which if anyone really wants to know how to make your shoes never come untied, stick around till the end and ask me that question. So there's a way to make sure your shoes never come untied based on science. But really buying the right shoe, it's about fit. Everybody is different, just like every team has different needs. And what you're going to do in the future can be a little bit different. I can tell you this because outside of Dimitri, none of you are in the Twin Cities. There is someone named Wendy, and Wendy, we call her the shoe whisperer. She's the one that the best runners go to, and she's expensive, and you got to book her out a month in advance. But she's amazing because she will get what you're currently doing, but then she looks at the wear patterns on your shoe. Like there's definitely a wear pattern on the shoe, and she'll include that in what we need. And her statement is always meet your body where it's at. So I might want to get the coolest Nike Vape Plus shoes, but that may not be what's right. And these shoes have been great for me for marathons and anything up to 100 milers. 317 miles in the heat of Tennessee in July. These things are going to melt if I try these. So it's important to also look at what you're going to do in the future when you consider a shoe. And not surprisingly, there's some pretty good analogies. Team. You should look at what you're currently doing, what wear patterns you find in what your team has done in the past, and you got to look for what your team is going to do in the future. So you need to pick the tools and techniques that fit your team. You need to leverage apps and tools to monitor stress and wellness. A couple different tools that we can talk about and send you a note on what they are. Many of them are already in your organization. They're pushed out by HR in terms of preventive that you can use to monitor your stress. You need to meet your team where they're at. One of the ways to do that is to simplify processes to align to team capabilities. It may be that your team is definitely not so great at documenting. So maybe it's more important to look at what they're doing and how they're behaving and what their throughput and flow is instead of simply looking at what they've documented. And you need to pick human-centered systems to enhance engagement so that people are actually using these systems. You should pick the right tools and processes for your current. And like I mentioned with my crazy race coming up, got to think about what your future needs are too. Another thing you can do in the buy the right shoes thing is you can make strategic policy and systemic changes. If you, not all this is bad. I want to be clear about that. It can make you stronger in short bursts and in ways that don't cause injury. This is the whole idea of running training, right? Otherwise, we just all show up for a marathon and hope for the best. We do things during running training that are meant to prepare us for the stressors we're going to face. Likewise, you can identify where your team is, and during that running training, by the way, we look at areas that we're not as good at, right? So, cardiovascular fitness or strength. Likewise, you can look at your team performance by looking at dips in your performance, and then look at your risk register, whatever you log stressors, and when you see that dip, and look for one-time versus systemic stressors. Systemic, of course, is something that happens all the time. I mentioned that knee issue I had. Sometimes I just have a little niggle, we call it. It hurts for a little bit and then it goes away. That could just be a one-time little injury. But if it's systemic, it comes back over and over and over. You can develop policies that address those systemic stressors. What does systemic mean? I should stop and say that a lot and it's a surprise for them. Except if you look at the logs, it happens on a regular basis. That makes it a systemic event. So it's happening all the time and you can predict it. And, a couple of those are the excessive workloads we talked about before, and also role ambiguity. You're not sure what you're supposed to be doing in your team. And that it's kind of it reduces the resilience and increases the stressors. And then lastly, you embed that prevention in organizational practices. And we're going to talk about hiring and training a little bit further in the presentation here, but that's about embedding that prevention in those organizational practices. Cool. Number 2, listen to your body. Workload management. It's very important to stay fluid as situations evolve. You should use flexible prioritization methods. When I'm running, I have a list of things that I need to do. But if I get a cold, I need to look at the key workouts, the things that I have to get done, so I can give my body time to recover. Likewise, if things are not going incredibly well for your team, like, I don't know, people are off on vacation, God bless them, or, there's a massive snowstorm and everyone's got to shovel out their driveways, just picking one out of the blue. When something like that happens, you need to be flexible in how you prioritize those things. Not everything can be an urgent thing. You should be proactive in your workload assessment, identifying what you're doing. And it's important to look at that in terms of balancing it over the long term. In running, we talk about something called cumulative load. And it's actually a number that's in most of the apps that we use when we're running to identify if our body has been doing too much too fast. Likewise, you can look at your team and you can look at that. hero employee that did a whole bunch of stuff in the last project, and maybe balance tasks and give them a little bit of break. Give them a little bit easier set of things to do in the next project. And minimize stress that way. Lastly, you should mitigate increased workload through benefits. Really good study in Huang about this one. Even though it's 2001, it was just so valuable. And it basically talks about this concept that if you know in advance that you're going to have this incredible increased workloads, think about cool little benefits to do. At Fans 24-hour race, they bring out the pizza at 5 p.m. Why? Well, people have been running for 9 hours, so I think they deserve a piece of pizza. Because they're starting to really feel it at that 9-hour mark. So it's important to bring out the pizza. Likewise, when I would work elections for newspapers, we always had pizza there as well. So I guess maybe this point is just throw pizza at people when things are bad. Anyway, so next item. We talked a little bit about cumulative load. Let's talk about cognitive load. When you go to a supermarket, you emerge exhausted. Well, one of the reasons you emerge exhausted is, believe it or not, you are making a decision on every item you look at on the shelf. So if you look at a shelf of 100 items, your brain is making a quick no-go decision on those 100 items in that aisle. And you can't help it. It's just the way your body works. That's how it picks out things that it hasn't seen before, because it is considered everything else. So there's cognitive load examples like that in our work. And it's important when those things happen to not go down to the battlefield and shoot the wounded. You need to be aware of where your team is at. Be aware that they're in cognitive load. And, look in the future. Obviously, in the fog of war, you can't solve it in the moment. We'll talk a bit more about that later, about waiting for the right moment to do these things. But look at the complex tasks. Put them on low stress periods. And that low stress periods can certainly be, some people are morning people, some people are evening people. Make sure to align their complex tasks with that low stress period. You can add a workflow if one doesn't exist and would help to clarify things. You can simplify it by thinking about Happy Path and then just documenting Happy Path and then having a whole separate workflow for non-Happy Path. But don't clutter up the actual workflow with the non-Happy Path stuff, because that's only going to happen 5-10% of the time. So simplify your workload to only show Happy Path, and with a little go to line 50 if crap hits. And then lastly, delete some workflows. Some of these things should not exist. Everyone knows it. Oh my gosh. Some of the workflows that I've deleted over the years just amaze me. They're things that never happen anymore. Lastly, you can address decision fatigue, that thing about the supermarket going through some intuitive design. Just get your UI folks looking at the things that you guys have to work through, or the UX type stuff, where you can make things easier to use. There's a really great book on this called Human Error, which talks about the 3 Mile Island disaster and how the nuclear engineers were working with such complicated systems, there was no way they could have dealt with that. You need sometimes a big red button. So sometimes you just need a big red button. You have to have some intuitive design. And like we mentioned up above, your workflows and processes, you should optimize them for where your team is right now. So listening to your body is also about having a collaborative and supportive culture. And for those of you who are members of teams and not leaders of teams, it's really hard to change culture from the bottom as opposed to the top. I get that. But there's a couple things that you can do to foster that collaborative environment. One is be a mentor, be there for someone, particularly the newbies or those that are new into this field. Help them out. And then second is there are a couple team building activities you can do, and it's not all ropes courses and trust falls and things like that. A couple of the resilient training activities that we're going to talk about later can double as team building activities. They're good. And then promoting open communication to address the emotional exhaustion that people are feeling. And this helps to build mutual support among employees. You got to read the room a little bit. This is one where you can't say to someone in a meeting room, man, you look exhausted. Have you thought about therapy? It's not cool. But you got to read the room, but sometimes it's just about having the courage to lead by example, being willing to state, hey, I'm having some issues here. Is anyone else having issues following this? So it can be, it can create that mutual support environment. Solution number 3, train for your race. You prepare through process and you simulate situations. Number 1, implementing tailored programs. We'll talk a little bit more about these later, but the key word is tailored. These are to your team's specific stressors. In running world, I don't do as many track workouts anymore. Why? I'm good. I'm really good with the cardiovascular. I don't need to build my fast twitch muscles for the type of things that I'm doing. Likewise, some training programs, I don't know, it's just overkill for most of what you're doing. You can tear out huge chapters of a lot of the resilience training that you're doing. It should be very tailored. So you ever watched, you're not going to respond to this. Sometimes if I watch a television program that I've seen parts of before, I will fade out while I'm watching the part I've seen before, and then I'll miss the next part that I haven't seen before. Likewise, if you have training programs that aren't tailored to your team, you'll get some stuff that have nothing to do with your team. People will zone out and you will lose them. So it needs to be tailored to your team. You should hire for resilience. Believe it or not, this is something that you can look for. And there's been hoop gobs of research on this particular topic. You look for things like cognitive flexibility, comfort with ambiguity, and a willingness to ask for help. And then lastly, the learning orientation. I think learning orientation could probably go for a lot of different things from strength to skill. It's just something that you can look for, and there are questions you can ask during your interview process. One thing that I've always asked for is, how do you learn new things? And I get a sense for whether they have a learning orientation on if they give me a good answer. Because if they don't give me an answer and they're kind of like, well, I watched some videos and I read some documentation, I'm sorry, you don't learn new things. So someone who learns new things has a dedicated path that they use to learn something new. You can also ask questions around willingness to ask for help. I just keep asking them questions about how they deal with stuff. And if at some point it doesn't end with, I asked someone for help, I'm sorry, they're probably not going to have a willingness to ask for help if they continue to talk about things that they would do. So next is you can create onboard resilience training. This can include some of the stress coping strategies and resilience training that we're going to talk about later. It can be a part of your onboarding. So when people join the team, they aren't starting from zero. And then you can enact job-specific interventions for folks to build skills and prepare employees for psychological demands that they're going to have to see. When I say job-specific, another way to think of that might be role-specific. Scrum Master has to deal with different things than does a product owner, than does a QA person. So it's important to look at those job specific interventions. I could also say it's about employee specific interventions. Sometimes people just are lacking in certain resiliency skills, and you can help them with that. Solution number 4, take time to recover from injuries. Um, uh, I will say I use an Aura ring, which is really great to help me with my sleep. Um, it also has this really cool feature where it tells me how resilient I am, and then it tells me how much I should train. And it's just rubbish. It's complete garbage because when I'm in the thick of training, when I'm in the flow, it says, boy, you need a break. You should take a day off. And I'm like, nope, that's not how it works. That's not how a build works. Likewise, if I'm on a purposeful break, it's like, dude, you should go out and get a run in. You're not doing great. So this is one where it's important to address that issue when you can, but not look at all the tools that they're going to give you necessarily. And it's also important to do it when the time is right. If you're in the middle of an emergency and you're trying to get through, this is not the time to try to recover. So you should always provide access to counseling in all states, but it's usually a little bit better to emphasize that when you're not in the soup. Likewise, you should promote mindfulness programs and wellness technologies. Those are really great. But it's important to do that at the right time. When there's time, it's horrible to hear about this great wellness thing that I can do, but meanwhile you're asking me to work 60 hours a week. That's not the right time. The time to do it was when there's natural breaks. And then lastly, you should hold resiliency training to address stress and promote well being. There are a variety of things that we do in development to do that, like tabletop exercises, where you sit around and you think about everything that could go wrong and everything that could go right. That's a great way to do it. DevOps uses chaos engineering. There's also micro recovery training, which we're going to talk about later. I just want to throw out that term micro recovery. It's something that you can do to get through even in the busiest times. Solution number 5. Sam, how we doing on time? I don't know if we do. I saw that this goes till 6:30. Do people typically go till 6:30? Or should I try to finish up in the next 10 minutes?
Being that it's a virtual meeting, you have as much time as you need. We don't need to
Okay.
be out of a building or close up the room. So as much
Okay,
time
great.
as you need, go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. All right, get enough sleep. As you've noticed, I've put a running term on top, and then down below, I say a key term for my research. Yeah, no, this is really just about getting enough sleep. There is so much research on this, not surprising. One of my favorites is a study called The Sleepless Sentinel by Reeves. And that's where I'm getting a lot of this data. We've all known the person who has stayed up as long as is necessary to get the thing done. They're a hero. We worship these people. They're also likely to burn out, and they're probably the most stressed person around. It's not a good thing. I used to sleep in the server room because in the old Unix days, the way you could tell that a process was failing, that you were running overnight, a set of processes you automated and you set up a set of processes to run overnight. But if it failed on one process, it would keep working to try to finish that process. And therefore, all the other processes wouldn't get done. So, how did we address this? Well, I slept in the server room, and when the server started to get loud and go, "Rah, rah, rah," it would wake me up. And I'd get up and I'd stop the process and I would log the process that I stopped so we could go back and fix that process later. And then I'd lay down on the floor of the server room and go back to sleep until the next time. So I was sleepless. I once billed 240 hours in a 2-week period during the Glaxo Wellcome merger back in the day. And I gotta tell you, I was that sleepless sentinel. I was applauded for the work I did. And if I had gotten more sleep, I probably would have figured out a programmatic solution so that when a process runs too long, you stop the process and you go to the next one. There was probably a way to do that even back in the Unix days. I don't know. I was so sleepless, I couldn't figure it out. So, and the key for sleeping is you dig your well before you're thirsty. You should not work on your sleep right before you go to sleep. That is too late. You should work on it while you're awake. You should drink the decaffeinated coffee later on in the evening. This is something that people also know. But um, it's the best time to work on your sleep is while you're awake, and you can use the same methods you would to debug a coding problem to debug your sleeping problem by looking at your logs. Figure out, wow, last night, I did not get as much sleep. And the reason was I had a little square of dark chocolate, as I sometimes do. And then I had another square of dark chocolate. And then I had a square of less dark chocolate with some caramel in it. And that was probably at least 2 chocolates too much. So my sleep suffered. Good to know. Good to know that's the situation. So when I'm not running as much, which I wasn't yesterday, limit the chocolate to maybe 1 square. So likewise, this is something that applies to your work life as well. So that you can figure that out. And my slide. Oh, there we go. All right. Promote manageable shift schedules. This is something that you can do to identify when people are more awake and when they can manage the stressors that they're in. So it's important to promote those manageable shift schedules and take breaks, scheduled and as needed. Don't forget about micro breaks. I'll be talking about micro recovery strategies later. So, all right. Cool. Come on, little Mr. Slide Deck. There we go. And you can implement work-life integration strategies. Very important to mitigate emotional exhaustion and improve recovery. Give people breaks to go out to their kids' soccer game. They're still going to come back and work. We still have a job to do, but you can do a better job at integrating some work-life stuff. Working from home has helped a lot of this, but working in person is also important for certain teams. So, but anyway, and these also help to improve recovery. And again, lots of good documentation on this. Solution number 6, run the mile you're in. So this is all about creating a flexible workplace. This is not just about looking forward. It's about looking at what you're doing right now. You should promote some flexible work arrangements. We talked about remote work just now. Definitely help your sleep. It will also help your ability to be resilient. Adjustable hours. Sometimes it's important to have those work-life boundaries. Maybe not. Make sure that people rotate being on call over the weekend. And then, of course, a good share of understanding about individual situations. Everyone's a little bit different. This comic is good about that. Little giraffe. I mean, guys, it's not that deep. Everyone has different things that they're good at. And things that will cause them to have more issues. It's also important to tie this to your organization's mission. If you do that and you get the research, now all of a sudden you can make your case because you've done the research to get the R and to figure out some of the I. And the R is also tied to your organization's mission. So now you've got your ROI that you can get. You've got your return on investment. And that really leads into our key takeaways today. Number 1, know that you can change. Teams do it all the time. Outside of a couple situations where there's been something illegal or immoral going on, I've yet to be able to see a team that couldn't recover. And I've seen some teams really turn it around. I think you all have seen that too. Do a gap analysis. find out where you can improve on things, because everyone's a little bit different. So do that gap analysis to figure out, where your team can be more resilient. Use this slide deck and the sources that I list in the slide deck to help. Look into tools and processes grounded in research that can make you be better. Make it very focused on your team and your organization. Prioritize based on R. Make sure to do the R and things your organization cares about. Most organizations, at least publicly, state that they care about more than money. So just make sure to tie it about the things that are in their mission and that they care about. And then persuade. Remember those 5 types of persuasion? Make sure you use data and at least one other of the classical styles. Tying it to mission is a good way to do it for a lot of cases. So, and then lastly, I can help. That's my email address. Literally retired, finished my doctorate. We'll probably go back to, or finishing my doctorate, we'll probably go back to work at some point. Do some small engagements with folks, some VCSO work in both the CIO work. I've done one engagement, still using my app dev background, but a lot of it's about security now. So I can help. If you have a question, please send it to me. I'd love to give you a hand. It's not really about the money at this point. So I just love to help out organizations. It does really help my research. All right, we're going to get to questions, but first, let's roll credits. Wow, this is sources in this presentation. I used these sources in my presentation, and maybe Sam, we can send out these slides to the attendees. This is all publicly available info. They can probably get access to it. And whenever possible, I use a DOI link, which means that they can get at it. So,
Would you
all
happen
right,
to have it in
great.
a GitHub repo?
With my sources? No, what a neat idea. Oh, I like that. I could definitely do that yeah, I could do that. Otherwise I could just send in the slide deck. So that's pretty easy too.
On GitHub, you get much more visibility though. So that's where
Okay.
I would suggest that. And besides, it's what all the cool
Good idea.
kids are using nowadays.
Oh boy, but is it secure? It's Microsoft. So I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're Microsoft MVP. You're not going to answer that question. So all right, great. All right. Any questions from the crew? If not, Sam and I are just going to talk about running long distance. Oh, you know what? I didn't talk about micro recovery strategies. That was solution number 7, which I pulled out of the presentation. I'm sorry. Micro recovery is exactly what it sounds like. They're small recovery things that you can do to improve your resilience. And it is really about stepping outside of your world for a moment. Some people will go for a walk. Some people will count to 10, though the research says you should count to 20. just a fun little data point there. You should count to 20 and you should think about your response on what you're going to do. So there's a number of micro recovery strategies like that. Some people do different things with their fingers. It's really about, frankly, you could concentrate on your left pinky and just really focus on your left pinky for about 20 seconds. It's a great micro recovery strategy. Me personally, I will grab a dumbbell and I will do something with that dumbbell and focus on some body part. So that's one of my micro recovery strategies. The key is just stop thinking about what you're dealing with right now. Step outside, deal with it, then go back in. So all those people used to take smoke breaks. Some of you may still take smoke breaks. Not a bad way. You got that deep breathing. I'm not promoting tobacco use here, keep in mind, but that's such a bad idea. It does take you outside of it as a little micro recovery. So, all right, cool. So, any questions?
No questions, just have a comment. And if
All
anyone
right.
else has a question or a comment, feel free to come off of mute or enter it into chat. But I definitely second what you were saying about stepping outside I'm not a smoker, so I would take a secondhand smoke break, if you will, hang out with the smokers for a
Sure.
bit, or better yet,
Sure.
just take a quick lap around the building. And I try to do that every 60 to 90 minutes. And it really makes me much more productive. And by the time I get home, I'm not as stressed, I'm not as tense. The day just goes by much faster and better. So
No,
definitely
100%.
second what you're
100%.
saying there.
And
While
there's
we're waiting,
there's so much research on that, Sam.
I bet.
That very thing. So yep, 100%.
While we're waiting for other questions or comments, I wanted to ask you, any stories that you care to share as far as you were trying to build resilience in a team and you just got a lot of pushback? Like personally, I found that anytime you're trying to do something with a team, it has to come from the top down. Very rarely does it go from the bottom up. What has been your experience? Did you encounter any serious pushbacks that basically turned into a brick wall?
I've generally found that to be true. It is hard to change culture in an organization from the bottom. It is definitely possible to change team from the bottom. Um, and the way you do it is the way you would do anything. You'd figure out each team member's motivation and sell them on the idea individually, caucus, before you call it to a vote. Get people's buy-in, build the solution with other people's help, and then implement it. So I've done that when I've been a member of a board or I've been a member of a team. Because as one of my old bosses taught me, your sphere of influence is so much bigger than your sphere of control. Lots of times you're forced to lead from not from the top.
Mhm.
And my best examples are from when I wasn't in charge. Even though I've been in charge of many teams, it's hard because I don't know if they're doing it because I'm the boss or if they're doing it because it's a good idea. But if I'm not the boss and everyone agrees to do it, now I know I sold them based on the value. So it can be a lot more enriching when you're not doing it from using the different types of power, right? One is position power, so one is persuasive power. The different personal power, all the different powers. I don't know. Sometimes I worry about the position power getting in the way. It's one of the reasons why I love working as a consultant. So the argument and the data have to stand on its own merits, not because I'm so vice president of blah blah blah. Yeah. So I would say for those people watching who are not in charge, boy, just talk to your teammates, get to know them, find out what they care about, start to circulate a different idea, get people's buy-in, take some of their ideas and modify your proposal, and then I don't know, when you're bringing it up to the room, everyone's kind of going, yeah, that's a great idea. So,
Yeah, and even if they think it's a great idea, a lot of times, like especially with management, they'll just look at the numbers and look at what the staff has to say, and sometimes they'll just say, we're not going to do it. It's too much time consumption. We're too busy putting out fires. So I found is that you want a gradual change as opposed to a huge shift,
mhm.
and that's how you implement change essentially.
And honestly, there's John Cotter's classic book on driving organizational change is always a good one. You go for quick wins, you do those different things. It does come back to ROI. And the reason why you do things gradual is because there's less risk. You believe you know what the return will be, but what if it's not? So if you do a smaller item, there's less investment. You get a smaller return, but it's a way to get started. It's foot in the door.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, it's a I would encourage. It's a classic. You can get it for free on the internet. It's an HBR document, Leading Organizational Change by John Cotter. Great document that will walk you through. I've led many organizational changes, doing not a whole lot more than just following that classic doc. And frankly, you gotta know the people and what motivates them,
Right.
because everyone, boy, I'm not gonna say everyone's different. I would say they're classes of people and their motivations. And after after doing this for 25 plus years and dealing with hundreds of people, it's pretty easy to tell. People wear their hearts on their sleeves. One of my favorite sayings, who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. You don't listen to what they say. You look at their facial expressions. You look at what their actions are. It's a lot better way to group someone into a class of person that needs to be motivated a certain way. So, but you guys probably know your teammates pretty well by now. And new teammates, yeah, there's a little bit to figure out, but hopefully you can figure that out during the interview process about the things that they really care about. Cool.
All very good input. Still not seeing any questions or comments, but I will
Great.
go ahead and post a couple links that we'll cover in just a second. And if I may, I'd like to take back the screen just to share a couple concluding announcements.
The one thing I just wanted to leave this with was a thank you. And again, leaving my LinkedIn and my email address should anyone wish to contact me. Okay. All right, great. Take back the screen. It's all yours, dude.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. All right, so you'll notice over in the chat window, there's a few links that are posted. And essentially, that is the link for the YouTube channel where the recording will be posted. If you would please subscribe to that to get upload notifications. It should be uploaded in a few days, right after the editing process. In addition, my blog, samnasser.blogspot.com. There I post various articles as well as tech events in the region. So if you would please subscribe to that to get updates as well. Lastly, there's a link for the feedback eval form. Please take a moment to fill that out so we can provide Jason with some constructive criticism. In addition, for filling out the eval form, you're going to be in a drawing to receive the Uno Platforms Visual Designer for cross-platform apps. It is a studio for developing the cross-platform apps in .NET, and you've got a free license for that if you win the drawing. Also, another thing I always like to mention is regarding jobs. So who's hiring and who's looking for work? If you would please make yourself known either in chat or verbally. Jay, you know of anyone that's hiring in the Minnesota area or by remote work?
Boy, in the Minnesota area, that one's a little tough. We're hit by that AWS and Target layoffs pretty heavy. So it is a glut of talent here in Minnesota. So yeah,
Okay.
so hiring in Minnesota is pretty tough. So yeah.
Or any
Sorry.
remote work for that matter. No, that's fine. It's understandable. But, like I said, always feel free to make yourself known. But if you are in the job market, I urge you to check out devitjobs.com. It's a website where you can search and filter by the various technologies, the region, whether working remotely or in person. Again, that's devitjobs.com. And lastly, my contact information. Should you have any questions, you can reach out to me. My email is snasser@nistechnologies.com. You can also find all my socials over on Linktree. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, let's do so. It's a great platform for keeping in touch, sharing articles, knowledge, and all the things that are going on. And so with that, thanks again to Jason for a very insightful presentation and a very interesting topic. Thank you all for attending and look forward to seeing you all next month. Good night, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Okay. Now, you want to stick around for a minute or two and ask me running stuff? I got lots of running stuff to tell you about. So not exactly for recording, but boy, lots of stories. So
I bet.
those are fun. Yeah. Or we can talk about it after you present at the TwinCities.net user group. Is that next week? Yeah, you're back with us next week. So
Yeah, looking
that's
forward to
great.
it
We can
next
stick around
Thursday.
afterwards. Yeah. I just did finish my 50th